So let's start off talking about carbohydrates. So actually, I mean, I feel more comfortable having you guys speak. So let me just ask you all for some time. Do you guys know what carbohydrates are? There is a mic button which you can click on and that will unmute you. So you can unmute yourself and then does anybody know what carbohydrates are or what foods have carbohydrates? And why is it that important? So no one. I guess I'm going to start. So carbohydrates are something that it's a macronutrient. And if you guys don't know what macronutrients are, so fats, carbohydrates, proteins are macronutrients, and carbohydrate is a macronutrient for which once you eat, you get a insulin response. So the response your body gives to these is by creating insulin, because that is the way to digest carbohydrates. So anything that can give your body an insulin response as well as turns into sugar is a carbohydrate. So sugar itself, pure sugar, glucose, sucralose, lactose, fructose, these are all carbohydrates, as well as complex carbohydrates like millets, and then there's carbohydrates and vegetables, then there are root vegetables, there are beans and lentils. All of these things have carbohydrates. So each of these, although after a particular time will be converted into sugar to a certain extent, they are different in certain ways, which is what we are going to look now. So what is one of the power of carbohydrates? The main power of carbohydrate is that it gets converted into energy, and our body uses it as energy much more easily than any other macronutrient. So, and also it can be converted into energy in the absence of oxygen. So why is this important? I want to talk about. The reason that this is important is that if you see the people who are marathon runners, they tend to drink these, sugary drinks like Gatorade and all of these when they're running, because running or any kind of an extreme sport is anaerobic, in the sense there is no oxygen, and in the absence of oxygen, the only thing that you can burn as fuel is carbohydrates. So if they run out of that store, they cannot use fats or any other stored sugars as an energy source. And that is actually a superpower of carbohydrate, that when somebody is doing an extreme sport, if they don't have carbohydrates, they may crash. And these people a lot of times crash, and which is not a good thing, because they are filling in themselves with sugar and then running. But that's what it is. And the great thing about other macronutrients is that they are stored and they can be used slowly, and they release slowly. So let's look at the next point. What foods have carbs? So like I said, lots of foods have carbs, and even you may not know, but proteins also eventually are converted into sugar. So they have some carbs too. So if you're trying to lose weight on an extreme diet, you have to limit the quantity of protein that you're eating. As long as you're eating moderate protein, you will lose weight. But if you overdo that, even protein gets converted into sugars. But the main source of carbs are vegetables, root vegetables, beans, lentils, rice, any kind of grains, millets, and of course sugar. And all kinds of different sugars are all carbohydrates. Also, a lot of people, I have covered this and said this a lot of times, is that even on diets, a lot of nutritionists and dietitians will tell you to substitute your sugar with some jaggery or honey or something that they think is slightly better than sugar. It is slightly better than sugar, but the extent to which it is better than sugar is so low that it doesn't make sense to substitute any of these things, because they have the same glycemic load, or they have the same carbs or the same sugars. The only difference is that honey will have certain enzymes which are good for you, and jaggery will have some minerals which are good for you. But the problem is that to get that much of minerals, you could easily eat a lot of not a lot, you could easily eat some vegetables, and that will give you the same minerals. You don't really need to eat sugar or jaggery in place of that. So whenever people are talking about substituting sugar for something that is also containing sugar or glucose, I feel like you'd rather just have that 1 teaspoon of sugar, especially if people are substituting in teas, which is for some reason the most favorite thing that nutritionists and dietitians will tell you to remove sugar out of. They are always after your morning cup of tea, and I know how important tea is to a lot of people, so I just say that go ahead and have your 1 spoon of sugar in that, and I will tell you why it's not such a big deal. So let's go to the next point, but just keep in mind that 1 teaspoon of sugar in the morning with your tea is fine if you, of course, are not highly diabetic. Now let's talk about refined carbs. Refined carbs are, one of the worst, and what they are again direct sugars. So if you have any of these sugars, they are refined carbs, as well as anything that does not have any fiber. So if you're having maida or a white flour, then that does not have the husk or the fiber of the grain, and that's a refined carb. So if you're having white rice, that's a refined carb. So any of these carbs, if they are eaten as it is, they will immediately be converted into something that is sugar, and they will give your body the same response that sugar gives, and sometimes even worse. So treat all of these together equally, and you have to count all of these carbs absolutely equally. Now there's another thing which is called complex carbs, and the difference between complex carbs and refined carbs is it possible for at least one or two of you to start your cameras, or is it uncomfortable? Because I will have a better interaction if I see somebody's face, but I mean, I won't force anybody to do that. But if it's possible, start your camera. Anyway, so the difference between simple and complex carbohydrates is that complex carbohydrates have fiber, and fiber will slow down the digestion of carbs. So if you have a simple carb or refined carb, you will immediately see a spike in your blood sugar. Even if you're healthy, you're a healthy individual with good metabolism, there will be a slight spike in your sugar levels. And if you are not, then you'll have a larger spike. And with complex carbohydrates, they kind of give you a slow release of energy. So you don't get that spike, and that's why you don't get that immediate insulin response. And this is a healthier way of managing your sugars. So if and when people want to eat carbs, they should try to stick to complex carbs. Now, there are hidden carbs in a lot of these foods. I wish, okay, so yeah. So there are hidden carbs in a lot of foods. I wanted to just, okay. All right. So to give you a perspective on carbs, I wanted to say that 1 teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams of carbs. So if you want to compare with some of the other foods that have carbs, I would like to give you a list of certain commonly advised foods or substitutes which are carb heavy or refined carbs or sugar or glucose that a lot of dietitians will advise you to take. So agave nectar has been a common substitute abroad. And 1 teaspoon of agave nectar is about 5 grams of carbs. So it is 1 gram more than sugar. You can say 25% more. 1 teaspoon of honey is a little more than 5 grams of carbs. And we can imagine, because it's a little thicker, if you see, if you make a sugar syrup, honey is slightly thicker. So that's another way of kind of calculating how many carbs a particular food might have, because sugar has a particular thickness or syrupiness. So honey is slightly more than that. Now, one advice that I have seen very commonly given in India, even to diabetics by dietitians, is when you have your afternoon tea, they tell you a lot of times to skip the sugar. And they'll say that as a snack, have 3 Marie biscuits with your tea. Because it's a low fat alternative and it's a very light snack. But, if you calculate 3 Marie biscuits have 19 grams of sugar. So it's almost 4 teaspoons of sugar. Almost 5 teaspoons of sugar. Just a minute here. Okay. So that is how many carbs are in certain foods, and these are hidden carbs because we think that it's not really that sweet. But you have to make sure that you notice everything that you eat. Anything that has grains has carbs, and anything that has a refined flour is definitely going to spike your sugar or give you an insulin response, which is exactly like sugar. So never think that only pure sugar is going to hurt you. So if you were to really have a snack in the afternoon and you wanted to eat something with your tea, you could have just had some sugar in your tea and had a few nuts, which would be completely low carb and much more acceptable than 3 biscuits and tea. Now, one slice of whole wheat bread is 9 grams of carbs. So about 2 teaspoons of sugar. And when you look at it like that, that's how you realize how much sugar you have in the whole day. And these are just guidelines. You can go online on these apps called MyFitnessPal, and there's a lot of such apps where you can calculate the macros in the food that you're eating. So put in whatever recipes you're eating, and they will give you the whole breakup of the carbohydrates, fats, or whatever you're consuming. If not that, what you can do is just type simple things like carbs in Mari biscuits or carbs in a whole wheat slice of whole wheat bread. And these are very easily available information. And from this, you can get an idea of how many total carbs you're having in the whole day. Again, I want to point out 1 cup of mango, so chopped pieces of mango, is 20 grams of carbs. So 1 cup of lentils is 22 grams of carbs. But lentils and mangoes are very different because lentils have a slow releasing carbs. Mango has fructose, which is even worse than glucose, which is a topic that we are going to take up when we talk about sugars. So not in this topic, but later we are going to take it up. And lentils have 22 grams of carbs, but they also have proteins. And if you want to eat 100 grams of cooked rice, it has 28 grams of carb. Now, it gives you an idea of how many carbs are in each of these different kinds of foods. So when we talked about a whole wheat bread, you have to understand that this bread is leavened. So in the sense there is yeast in it, and it's a very light slice. And even that light slice is so heavy in carbs. And even the rice is extremely heavy in carbs. But there's a way to cook rice, which is something that I'm going to talk later on, which makes it much better for you. So for now, I hope this has been kind of an eye opener for most of you. Some of you who have already been following this for a long time may already be aware of this. But does anybody have any questions at this point? Then you can ask me. So I think I'll continue. And if you have questions, just raise your hand. I will. Okay, there's no. Okay, so let's go to insulin. So what is insulin? Insulin is a hormone, and this is a hormonal response that our body gives to any sugar or carbs that come into our body. And it is also responsible for converting all the carbs into energy and storing them, or making sure that they are used in a way, in a form that the body and the cells can absorb and use. So it converts the carbs in a form that your cells can use for energy. And as I had said in the first class also, the sugar or the carbs are first converted into by insulin into energy, and they are put into the cells. Now, insulin is something that will work as a key to a lock, and it will try to open the cells up and try to shove the sugar in. And the reason I have to say shove the sugar in is because we have been eating a lot of sugar, lot more sugar than we require. So most of the time, our body is actually forcing our cells to take in extra sugar, which a lot of times our body does not want or need. So that is what eventually starts happening, is that your cells do not need the sugar, and your insulin is just insisting and knocking on their doors and telling them to take more and more sugar because it is available, and it doesn't want that sugar lying around in the bloodstream. Now, whatever sugar the cells do not need is converted into glycogen, and the body tries to store that in the liver for those times when you don't have any food coming in. So if we did not have our glycogen stores, then immediately after our sugar comes to normal, we would start going into low sugar and we would just, faint. So it is for those times between meals that when there is no constant supply of sugar, the glycogen stores are used. Now, whatever you have stored in the liver also gets full. So the stores of the liver get full, and the rest of it, the insulin makes sure that it is converted into fats, and that is what you store in form of fat to be used when we don't even have glycogen stores. So if you were to be stranded in a desert, you would use first your sugar from the cells, then you would, and from your blood if there is any extra, then you would go to your glycogen stores, and once those are empty, then you would try to tap into the fat, and that's how the sugar is used step by step. Now, if you once you keep the sugar needed for energy in the cells, you keep the rest in the liver as glycogen and convert the rest into fat. Yeah, that was the next point. Now, if you continue to consume more sugar after your body has had enough, your cells are going to not want to take more sugar, although your insulin is trying to shove it in. What starts happening is, like, just like any nagging person in your life, you learn to ignore that person. Similarly, your cells learn to ignore the insulin, and this condition is called insulin resistance. So because it doesn't need more sugar, it starts ignoring the knocks of the insulin, or the insulin trying to shove the sugar in, and the sugar continues to stay in your bloodstream. And that is the point where your body tries to make even more insulin. What it tries to do is that it realizes that you're not taking it efficiently in, and that is the reason it will try to hike up your insulin, and this becomes a serious condition. Now people are recognizing this, and doctors are recognizing it as insulin resistance. And before you become a diabetic, for about 10 years you are in this state. From 5 to 10 years, obviously depending on how unhealthy your lifestyle has been and how fast you have sped this up, maybe it is 10 years or 5 years or even less, but you have been an insulin resistant person or somebody with a metabolic disease for quite some time before you get high sugars. So when your sugars start going above 10 to maybe 25, 40, sorry, when your insulin starts going from about 10 as a fasting insulin to sometimes even 40, that is when your body will finally give up and not be able to make more insulin, and that shows up as blood sugar, because now all of that sugar is lying around in your blood. And then you will start seeing some reactions, like probably your wounds won't heal, or you're sweating a lot, or you're going a lot to the bathroom. So any of these things, or you're just not feeling well, you're feeling tired, and you go to the doctor and they do your basic blood test in which they find out that you're a diabetic. What we need to understand is that it's very easy to find out that you're a diabetic, but if you can catch it before this, then you can actually save yourself from becoming a diabetic. Or like I said, even after you are a diabetic, you can definitely reverse this condition to a certain extent. And when people say that, can you reverse diabetes? The point about it is that you can always control it. So even if you're getting absolutely nice normal blood sugars, it is not reversed, because if you try to go back to the lifestyle that you were at when you got diabetes, it's going to come back. So you can definitely change your lifestyle and your diet to a certain extent and keep yourself under control, and your blood sugars will be great. But if you want to still continue to do the things that you were doing earlier, then no. So this is not something like a switch which becomes off, because you have to remember that even when you started getting metabolic disease and you got diabetes, it wasn't a switch. It has happened over a period of time. It was a gradual what do you say, response of your body, that now it is showing up as sugar in your blood. So what is the test if you want to check whether you're going to become diabetic? There are two tests that you can do. There is a fasting insulin test, and I forgot to get water. So there's a fasting insulin test, and there is a HbA1c test. Now, fasting insulin test will tell you how much insulin your body has to make even when you're not eating. So why does your body make insulin when you're not eating? The reason being that your glycogen stores and your fat stores are trying to put some insulin, are trying to put some sugar in your body while you're sleeping. So in the middle of the night, you have probably used up all of the sugar that came from your foods. And now your body is looking for energy for certain bodily functions. And those that energy comes from your liver. Now that comes in the form of sugar, but your body also needs to regulate that. It can't just have high blood sugars. And so it is also, along with sugar, it's making insulin. This could become a mismatch. And in probably my case, I have a mismatch. So I will turn up with high blood sugars. In an absolutely healthy person, it completely matches and it maintains a certain grade sugar, which is probably under 80 or something like that. So that is when you're completely healthy. But still, what could be happening is that for managing that much sugar, your body has to make maybe 40 units of insulin. And that itself shows that your body is slowly becoming insulin resistant, because when you start off or when you're young, your fasting insulin start from about 2 or so. So your body should be able to maintain your fasting insulins at that level of insulin, and which it is not able to do that. So that is a great indication that you need to get serious about your health and your diet and your lifestyle. So anything about 10 is telling you that within a few years, you could have to face diabetes. The next thing is HbA1c. HbA1c is almost clearly like a blood test of sugar. It tells you the 3-month control that you had on your blood sugars. So, you could be eating very little low carb food and you could go for a blood test and you will see your sugar levels being perfect. But that doesn't mean that it's like that all the time. And HbA1c reflects how it has been on an average in the past 3 months. So that's another great test. About 6 is considered diabetic, but I think anywhere where you're 5.2, you have to start getting serious about your diet. So these are the 2 tests that I would advise anybody who wants to keep good health to do, because metabolic health is something that affects everything in your body. Like they say, diabetes is one of the worst diseases to have. So I'm hoping that everybody here wants to really look at getting healthy at a core level and not just like looking slim and nice. And that's the reason I'm covering these topics, because these at the risk of repeating this, diabetes can affect everything from your brain to your heart. It's one of the leading causes of cardiovascular diseases, kidney function, neuropathy, like I said, brain, Alzheimer's, dementia. There's nothing it doesn't affect, eyes or whatever. So you don't want to start off too early. You want to have enough time. So the best way is to do a few of these tests and become serious and particular about your diet and lifestyle. So let's go to the next slide. So what are the good carbs? Now, people want to know. There's a lot of diets like keto and paleo and so many others which have become very popular these days, and a lot of these diets eliminate most of the carbs. So the way they work is that you're using all of the stored fat that you're storing for all these years, not just now, but you have been storing it for some day. And that day is when you start doing keto. So you're taking no carbs. So your body is forced into converting everything else that it can find into carbs. So first of all, it starts using your glycogen stores. It uses all of the sugar that is in your liver, and then it starts burning your fats, and which is a great thing. So you will get great results on keto immediately. And it is extremely intuitive that if you have fats or if you have sugars stored, those are the things that you should not be shoving into your mouth. Like it would not make sense to put any more carbs, because carbs are what have been converted into fats. So on keto, that's exactly what you do. The problem with keto or a low carb diet is sometimes they get extremely restrictive. They do not fit in your lifestyle. They do not fit in your social life, and they become repetitive. Also, they are very low in fiber, which can be a problem in the long run. So we will come to that, but that's the reason you still need carbs. You still need carbs for energy. Your brain uses carbs and it finds it the most efficient fuel to burn. It does use ketones, but it would prefer to use carbs. So to keep your brain healthy, you do need certain amount of carbs. Now, where do we get these carbs from? Let me just confirm that my okay. So where do your good carbs come from, or where should they come from? Now these should come from non-starchy vegetables like leafy and cruciferous vegetables. Leafy are all the spinaches and the amaranthus leaves, all kinds of leaves. Even the herbs are really important. So if you're eating basil, you're eating mint, these are all great additions to food. So what I do is I always every week I have one batch of hummus made and one batch of basil pesto made, because that goes on a lot of things. You can top your salads with that. You can take it with your gluten-free or low carb or whatever bread that you use. You can use that to eat these foods, as well as you can top it up with lots and lots of olive oil, good quality olive oil, which is excellent for you. So that becomes my even my source of eating olive oil, because there's only, it's a creamy blend, so you kind of don't make out the fat that you're eating. And I would prefer to eat a lot of olive oil, so that becomes a good vehicle or vessel for olive oil. So mint chutney is a great thing. If you can add oil to that, then even better. Then eating a lot of spinach, but you want to always keep changing the leafy greens that you're eating. So don't repeat one. If it's one of those is your favorite, then you might land up just eating it in different ways, which is not good for you, because there is, I think, oxalates in it, which there are specific compounds which, if you eat the same greens on a daily basis, it can affect you. That doesn't go for herbs. So herbs are really good. You can even eat some couple of leaves of tulsi, or other herbs like that. Coriander is great. Parsley is great. Coriander is also a detox herb. So that is a great addition to your meal. So that comes under leafy. Cruciferous is cabbages, broccoli, cauliflower. Then there's these small Brussels sprouts, then pak choy, there's Chinese cabbage. And fortunately in India, a lot of these vegetables are now easily available. If you're not living in India, even better, then you have a choice of eating Chinese vegetables and Indian vegetables and American vegetables. Like, you get foods from all cultures. And that's one thing I really miss in India. But it has improved in the recent times, that there's a lot more choice. So you get to eat the best from most cultures. Now, another thing is, it would be nicer, I have said here, if you could eat bitter vegetables and bitter greens. A lot of these bitter vegetables have high polyphenols, so it's like an antioxidant, and it keeps you young and healthy for longer. So it's an anti-aging antioxidant. Even olive oil has a lot of that. So if you buy the best quality olive oil, it has polyphenols. And that's the reason to add these bitter foods to your diet. I don't like them much. I especially don't like bitter gourd. So if any of you has a wonderful recipe for bitter gourd, just share it with me. I have a few good recipes, but I still want to say I don't enjoy it as much. Methi is a good vegetable to eat. So it's bitter. Methi dana is good. You can eat beans and lentils. So I'm going to talk about how you can cook them. So there's another aspect. Like I said, not everything is just plain flat and calculations. Now, beans and lentils are good, and especially if you're a vegetarian, they're a great addition for proteins to your meal. They're extremely satisfying and filling. Now, the problem with these things are, including grains, that and even some vegetables, that they have this plant compound called lectins. And lectins are kind of like a poison or a chemical compound that the plant makes to save itself from predators, or to be from being eaten. So for example, like animals can run away. If some animal is chasing, it can save itself. It has a chance to save itself. And plants do that by creating all of these compounds, which are slightly poisonous to the people who eat them. Now, if you were to eat 5 kidney beans, I hear that if you were to eat them raw, it could kill you within like 5 to 10 minutes. This is something doctors say. I would not want anybody to try it out on themselves or their spouses. But so that's how strong these chemicals can be. So what is the way to cook them? I think all of us Indians know how to cook them. There is certain wisdom that we have been passed down through generations. We don't understand it a lot of times because it has not been written down and documented, unlike how everything in the West has been documented. So unfortunately this wasn't, so we don't take certain things in our culture that seriously. But beans should be soaked, lentils also should be soaked overnight, because that actually reduces the lectins in it. And if possible, you should change the water 2 to 3 times. After soaking them overnight, you should always be cooking them in a pressure cooker. So for those of you who are not Indians, pressure cooker is something that is again easily available all over the world now. But if you go to an Indian market, and Indians are all over the world, so there are Indian markets and grocery stores everywhere, get yourself a pressure cooker. It is one of the best thing that you are going to invest in. And you cook these in a pressure cooker. It also cooks everything faster, so probably it doesn't have to be at a high heat for too long, so which helps in saving some of the nutrition from vegetables, not so much from beans and lentils. But if you cook your vegetables in a pressure cooker too, for like a flash moment, it cooks really quickly. I do that a lot of times. You will save on heating it too much and losing some of the vitamins that are in these vegetables. So we were still talking about beans and lentils. Let me come back to that. So you cook them in a pressure cooker really well, and after that you have to consume them. If you were to put them in the refrigerator and eat them the next day, it is even healthier for you. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Now, starchy root vegetables. Let me just confirm that everybody has been able to join the class. Nobody is struggling. Okay, I'm hoping that everybody who wanted to join has joined. Okay, so yeah. So the other thing that you should add as good carbs to your food is to your diet is starchy or root vegetables. And please leave potatoes out, because they're almost like refined food or a processed food. So what potatoes are almost like maida is for whole wheat, or refined flour is for whole wheat. So let's leave potatoes out, but there are a lot of other extremely healthy root vegetables. So yams are very good for you. There are a bunch of yams that are available in the market. Again, since I've lived in US, I can only talk about US, and of course I know in UK too, but the US is one of the I mean, they have one of the most variety when it comes to food, because there are people from all kinds of cultures and they have their markets there. So you can buy purple yams, which are excellent. So any foods that have dark colors are good for you, because they are full of antioxidants and polyphenols. So purple yams are delicious. Like, I buy this in India too. It used to be available on Big Basket, but recently it's not. Probably it's not the season for that. And then there's this white yam, then there's elephant yam, sweet potatoes. So we have white Indian sweet potatoes, then there are these orange or yellow sweet potatoes that are available in other countries. Those are good. Then there is purple sweet potato, which is also excellent. And the reason that these things are good for you is because they're full of fiber. So although they are a carb, they are full of fiber, and I will tell you why fiber is important, but that's the reason to include them in your food. Beetroot is very good, and not potatoes. You can eat some carrots too. So all of these starchy vegetables are good. Now, when I say that you want to include these foods, you want to make sure that you're counting the carbs in these foods, because remember that starchy vegetables are going to have carbs. So you can't be eating a flatbread or a roti along with some starchy vegetable and think that this is your meal, because they are both carb rich foods. You want to mix it up with a little bit of protein, and you want to put some green vegetables and other, like I said, cruciferous vegetables. So you have to eat a mix of all of this to fill yourself up. Things that are high in fiber will fill you up. But if you try to fill yourself up with a starchy root vegetable, you are going to land up eating a lot. So you have to understand that you have to eat all of this in a certain combination. Let me complete the whole of carbs, and then I'll talk about how much carbs you could eat per day. The other good addition to good carbs is millets. So I think most of you have heard of millets are, there are a lot of millets easily available, especially in India, but now they are easily available world over. So I hear that even jowar puffs are available in USA, and especially Dr. Gundry, who I follow, he, I think, has his own brand. So if you live in USA, you will be able to buy that, and you're lucky. Jowar puffs are available in India too. They are almost like popcorn. So you can buy them, roast them a little bit, and you can sprinkle the spices that you want, and they can be eaten in that form. The other way is we have jowar atta or flour. So jowar is sorghum. I am sorry because I know that there are a couple of people who are non-Indian. So I just, on default start talking in Indian terms. Jowar is sorghum. So you can buy sorghum puffs, like I said, where you would stay. And you can buy the flour and make rotis or flatbreads out of it. I'm going to talk about a couple of great recipes for that, which are lower in carb than if you were to make it using just the jowar flour. So so that's millets. Now there's another way which I advise people to eat millets in is, if you try to make roti. So a lot of us have maids and they will make roti for us or flatbreads for us, and we have no idea how much um, flour goes into making it. So we really don't know how many carbs we are eating. We are just thinking that we're eating a healthier option to roti, and which is true. But carb counting is also extremely important if you're trying to lose any weight. And if you lose weight, your blood sugars, your metabolism, everything improves. So that is another reason to lose weight, not just to look good, but to improve your health overall, you need to lose weight. To improve your health overall, you need to eat low carb. Even if you are fairly at a good weight, you still need to eat low carbs, because carbs are inflammatory, and inflammation is linked to, again, a host of diseases, and sugars are linked to a host of diseases. So that's what I mean when I say that everything is interlinked. You can't just say that, my blood sugars look great, so I'm great, because you will see that a lot of slim people do get heart attacks. And there's a reason, for all of this, because they're not completely healthy. Something that can be seen on the outside as healthy may not be translating to the inside. So you want to make yourself inside and out healthy. So that is that. So what I was saying is that your maid is making your roti and you have no idea how much flour has gone into one roti, because you're not weighing it. And even if you weigh it, is it some of it water? Is it a dry roti? Is it like carbs, or it is water and carbs? So another idea that I think I love, and I don't know if everybody would love, is to make a porridge out of these millet flours. So put them in a lot of water and make a porridge. So that's the way to cook it. You can cook it in the pressure cooker, and then again put a little bit more water, and then you season it. Probably you could have just made an upma kind of thing with it. But I like to make a porridge because a lot of water goes along with that, and it fills you up. You can add vegetables into it. You can add leafy vegetables. You can add cabbage. You can add, of course, onions and spices. You can temper it. You can add loads of olive oil, some ghee, and eat this. And this will be a completely filling meal. You can even add some almonds to it or walnuts to it. Walnuts are one of the best nuts to eat because they have the healthiest fats. So that's another way to eat millets. Again, I want to take a break here and ask you guys, is it getting monotonous? Does anybody want to say anything in the middle? Does anybody have any questions? Raise your hand or unmute yourself and speak to me. No questions, I'm assuming. Is it sounding monotonous? Are you guys bored? Because it's very confusing for me since I'm just talking to myself. Okay, Rashmi, thanks for the feedback. All right, so that's the way I would eat millets sometimes, because I know as Indians you want to make a nice spicy sabji or some kind of a meat preparation and eat a nice roti with it. Porridge is not going to work every time. But if you are a vegetarian and you wanted to eat something for breakfast, which is not very high in carbs, then I would do something like that. I would add some millets and some dal and make kind of like a khichdi out of it, which is almost like an upma, but I would make it like a porridge, like a liquid thing, so that you're filled and you add a good amount of vegetables and oil or fat to it. So let's look at the next thing, that is basmati rice. Now, basmati rice is supposed to be the rice with the least glycemic index. And I haven't probably spoken about glycemic index. So glycemic index is, there's one thing, the concept of carbs, which I'm sure you guys have understood because I keep repeating that. And I think I've repeated it 2 to 3 times in all of my classes. But glycemic index is so carbs is something that is converted into sugar. Glycemic index of a food is the speed at which it is converted into sugar. So something that is 50 grams of carbs, two things that are 50 grams of carbs are going to raise your sugar differently. And the example that I had given is that a cookie will immediately raise your sugar, sometimes even faster than pure sugar can, because it's got wheat, and wheat has a tendency to raise your sugar really quickly. So it is a refined flour and it raises your sugar suddenly and then it'll crash suddenly. So that is called something that has a very high glycemic index. And another example that I had given was broccoli, which will raise your sugar really slowly because it is full of fiber and your body takes time to digest and absorb it. Whereas the cookie is completely something that dissolves in your mouth. By the time it is into your gut, it is pure sugar, it is immediately absorbed and your sugar spikes. So these two have given your body a different glycemic response. Now, no points for guessing which one is better because I have given the example which itself makes it clear. But let me just repeat this. Definitely a low glycemic index food is better for you. You always want to focus on eating foods that are low in glycemic index because they also keep you fuller longer. They also do not put you in the cycle of eating and being hungry, eating and being hungry. If you guys have forgotten this concept, let me again repeat it. So for example, when you eat a cookie, what happens is you have eaten the cookie, which is a completely refined food. It goes into your gut. It is almost instantly converted into sugar. So your body immediately makes insulin because it's like a load of sugar has come in. I need to make a load of insulin. So it makes a lot of insulin and the sugar response or the sugar gets converted and shoved into the cells or whatever had to be done by the insulin is done. But now you're still at a higher level of insulin because your body made a lot of insulin. The response of your body to high glycemic food is extreme. Now that insulin remains in your blood, it is circulating, and after some time it completely gets rid of all of the sugar from the blood and your body realizes that it is hungry. And such foods will keep you in the cycle of eating often because you are keeping on making insulin. Because again, if you grab a packet of chips, it is refined food that will again give you an insulin response, and you're just putting your insulin up and looking for food and putting your insulin up and looking for food. The other thing, if you remember, the other role of insulin is to store fat. So anything that is extra also, because of the presence of insulin, is getting stored as fat. So you're not only eating a lot, but all of that or most of that you're also very easily storing as fat. And that is the reason you don't want to eat foods which have a high glycemic index or high glycemic load. Now, basmati rice, as I was saying, I was talking about that, and that is where I talked about the glycemic index, has the lowest glycemic index that we know of among rices. Now, I have seen, because I'm like researching and looking at any and everything around. So I have seen that there are certain people who have made hybrid rices, which have a much lower glycemic index and response, and I have tried buying all of them, but I probably haven't compared apples to apples. I've just someday eaten one kind of rice and the other kind of rice, but I've eaten a different quantity, so I really don't have the data to tell you exactly which rice is the best. But among the known rice, and this research is happening more in India, a lot of this is happening, and soon I'm sure we'll find a rice which is really low in glycemic index. Now the problem with these kind of rices are that they are not really starchy, and where I come from, I love my starchy soft rice. Unfortunately, we have to give up on that rice and eat something that is drier. So when you see that the rice is light and it is non-sticky, it is probably something which has a low glycemic index. Among those, basmati is the known to be the best. Doctors will tell you that a lot of research has happened on it. A lot of people have seen their blood sugars and they know for sure that basmati rice gives you a very low glycemic response. I have seen this on myself too, so I can tell you very surely that this is the truth. Now, there is a certain way in which you can cook all of these grains and lentils and beans so that they give you even lower glycemic response. So that way is, again, what I said is with beans and lentils too, this works. What I do with my rice is I soak it overnight and then I cook it in the morning in a pressure cooker. Because you've soaked the rice overnight, you have to remember that you have to switch off your pressure cooker really quickly. So I normally within a whistle or so, I'll switch off the pressure cooker and also try to semi remove the pressure. So those of you who don't know what a pressure cooker is, it cooks your food at a high pressure, so the boiling point of the food goes down or the water goes down, goes up, I'm sorry. So the boiling point increases and it doesn't lose energy. It uses that for cooking quicker. But it builds up pressure, and that is the pressure I'm talking about. So if you don't release the pressure, you will have overcooked, mushy rice, which is like, I don't know, kichad or whatever. So you don't want to do that. You want to release the pressure immediately and your rice is ready. Now I open that rice up and I immediately put it in a pot in the fridge. And I keep it there for 24 hours, and that rice I eat the next day. The reason being that when you do that, resistant starch is developed in your rice. Now, resistant starch is something that I want to talk later about because it has a lot to do with your gut bacteria and your gut. But to tell you quickly, resistant starch is the starch which doesn't get digested in your small intestine. It will pass through the small intestine into your large intestine, where all of your gut bacteria is, and it feeds your gut bacteria. The reason to feed your gut bacteria is because they are your buddies. You want them to be there. You want to have their help to do a lot of your body functions, especially your digestion. And if anybody has not understood how important digestion is, I want you guys to see that digestion is something that is picking up all the nutrition from your foods. If that is not happening efficiently, you are throwing away all of your expensive nutritious food into the toilet. So you want an extremely healthy gut, and you want your gut bacteria to be working well, and that's the reason to feed them. The other reason you're feeding them is because if you don't keep this resistant starch to feed them, then you're digesting it. If you eat it the day that you cook the rice, the whole of it is a starch which your body is immediately going to digest and absorb as sugar for yourself. So if you put it in the refrigerator, eat it after 24 hours, and if you eat it about after 2 days, it becomes even better. So I have seen with myself, I'm extremely sensitive to eating starches. So if I eat any other kind of rice in any other way, there is a 50 to 60 point difference between the two in my blood sugars. So basmati gives me the lowest response, and especially if I eat it like this. So even if you're eating outside food, once in a way you're getting yourself some biryani or something, if you put it in the fridge and you eat it the next day, see, let's hope that they're already using the day old rice. A lot of times they could be, but if they're using fresh rice, you put it in the refrigerator, you're eating it the next day. The good thing about basmati is, the good thing about biryani is that it already has a lot of fat, and the fat will again lower the glycemic index. So I guess you guys got it. This happens with potatoes too, and it happens with beans and lentils too. So anything that is starchy, you can put it, cook it, put it in the refrigerator, eat it 24 hours later. You can steam it or any other way. The time when you're eating it, you heat it up a little bit and you eat it, and you will see that your blood sugars will have a lower response, which is great. And I have taken up a lot of topics for today. So let's talk about fiber. Are there any questions again? Okay, great. I'm able to understand what you're sharing. Great, great. Okay, and anybody has any questions, any feedback, anything? Are you able to unmute yourself? Have I locked you guys? Okay. Or you can just type your question in the chat. All right. So I think there are no questions. Let's continue. So the next topic is fiber. Fiber is something that slows down the digestion or breaking down or absorption of foods. So as we took the example of broccoli as compared to the cookie, broccoli has a lot more fiber, and that is the reason it will break down slower. It will be absorbed later, and the fiber in that food will go and feed your gut bacteria. So whenever you're eating, you want to think about them too. If some of you don't know, we have 10 times as much bacteria in our body as we have cells. So they say we have more of bacteria DNA than we have human DNA in our body. And they are one of the most researched things these days when it comes to food, nutrition, and health. So in the recent, I think 2 or 5 years, I don't know. I mean, I'm very bad at remembering specific numbers, but there have been 22,000 studies that are happening just on bacteria. And I want to share some of the interesting findings and experiments that are happening on this. So a lot of us, we don't know that a common way to help young babies who have low bacterial growth, bacteria in the sense good bacteria, when they don't have good bacteria, a lot of times they give them fecal transplants from healthy children or family members or healthy babies. Now fecal transplant is something that is obviously clear. It is, they will take the stool of one person and they will put it into the gut or into shove it in to the other person, and it transplants some of the bacteria, and some of them will actually find home there and multiply and improve the health of the person or the child. And they have seen that just by doing fecal transplant between people, even family members, normally they try to transplant from family members. So if one of them is hurt or is not healing, they will transplant the bacteria from one person, one family member to that member. And they have seen people healing better, changing their health, and they have even reversed diabetes just doing this. It's just that it is at the preliminary stages, and it is such an exciting field. I cannot wait for all of the things that are going to come out of this. They have also done a research in which it was an experimental thing. I think there was one athlete who was hurt, and she had some health issue. So they did a bacterial transplant into her from one of her cousins. And she was an athlete and she was cured or healed or whatever. And she started running. But within 3 months or so, she gained 30 pounds. And then when they looked at it, the fact was that the cousin that this was transplanted from was an overweight individual and or maybe obese, I don't know for sure, but the bacteria can have that level of impact. So that is the reason that you feed your gut bacteria. So anytime that you're eating anything, you want to remember them. You want to make sure that you're giving them enough fiber, because they live on fiber. So you want to give fiber through vegetables, through root vegetables, and even sometimes through other starches like millets. You give resistant starch through all of your rices, and if you eat potatoes, then beans. All of these can be made into resistant starch and you can feed them. Fiber lowers the glycemic index of food. As I explained earlier, if a cookie was full of fiber, it would have a lower spike in your sugar and your insulin. So that's another, when you're eating a food, the combination in which you eat it matters a lot. So you know that there are certain dietitians will tell you that you can eat dal and rice and ghee and you won't have a sugar spike. Now that's an extreme statement according to me to make, because if you're a diabetic or if you are anybody with any metabolic disease, you're going to get a sugar spike regardless. So I think that you can't carelessly follow that, but it has some truth. The fact of the matter is that you've added some ghee into this. So you've added fat to that, as well as you've added dal, which has some protein. So if you're eating that rice with protein and fat, it's going to have a lower glycemic index. So for example, like I said, if you're eating a non-vegetarian meal of biryani, it has lots of oils and it has some, just a moment, I was. So if you're eating a non-vegetarian meal, it has a lot of protein, it has a lot of fat, and it has rice. So your rice will have a lower glycemic load on your body. It is a good combination to eat. The only thing is that if you're eating biryani from outside, it has a lot of bad fat. So make biryani at home, use olive oil, or you could make it in ghee. Use the best ingredients, and it's a great meal to have. And you could even add some spinach to it if nobody notices or cares, or don't do that because my kids will just not eat the whole thing for that reason. But the point here was that eating things in a combination will again help you in lowering the glycemic index. Most of us are eating it in a combination, so you guys may not see that difference. You will anyways be eating it with vegetables and things like that, but a combination of a grain and a starchy vegetable is not a good idea, because these are two starches. So you want to make sure it has some protein, it has fat, it has sometimes even some probiotic food, and then you have your grain. That is how you would eat it. The other thing that I forgot to mention about rice that I like doing is that I like to cook it in loads of water, because I am, again, as I said before, I am somebody who likes soft and mushy foods. So I like porridges. So you can make a lovely porridge using a little bit of rice and a little bit of dal and lots of water. So if you put six times as much water and you salt it well, it tastes really good. If you're a non-vegetarian, you can even cook this in a chicken broth and that will taste good. And we have a name for that. You may not understand, but these are great ways to eat some starch and get a lot of satisfaction. And then, that porridge should be topped with some ghee or olive oil. And in case you're eating olive oil, not with a little, you can even top it with a lot of olive oil, because it's safe for you. It's full of polyphenols, and it has been seen in a lot of studies that eating more olive oil helps you lose more weight and become healthier. So there you are. Fiber increases satisfaction. You'll eat fiber and you'll feel full. If you eat a cookie, you're going to feel hungry. That's another reason to include a lot of fibrous foods. It feeds the gut bacteria. I covered that. It's there in vegetables and leafy greens. So eating a lot of salads, leafy greens, and vegetables before your meal is what I do a lot of times. And it's an odd way of eating. Not everybody is going to be able to do it. As an Indian, as a Westerner, you do sometimes start with a salad and a soup, and that is such a great idea. So even if you have a soup with a little bit of cornstarch or something, or some kind of a healthy thickener, and you have vegetables in it and you have some protein in it, and you start off with that, and then you go to a big bowl of salad. I don't eat as much salad. I love salads, but sometimes it's difficult to have fresh vegetables. Whereas when you cook the vegetables, you can even put it in the refrigerator and eat it the next day, which is why I like cooked foods. But I mean, I like salads if somebody were to make it for me every day. So what I do is I sit with a fairly large bowl of cooked vegetable, and I just eat any one basic vegetable. I fill myself up, and then I go to the next stage where it is either some little bit of my basmati rice cooked, 15 years ago or something like that, with a little bit of dal or some kind of a chicken curry or whatever. And recently the change I have made is I'm trying to cut down on meats and trying to eat more of seafood. Also, I don't enjoy chicken as much, but chicken is something you could eat occasionally. And we are going to talk about that in another class. So let's stick to just how to fill yourself with loads of fiber. And you will see, if you do this with your vegetables, if you start off with a big bowl of vegetables which is cooked in great olive oil and lots of olive oil, and you top it off with a little bit of fresh coconut. If you can't find fresh or frozen coconut, then you can go and even add the desiccated coconut. And this is such a filling meal that you don't need to eat much after that, and all of your cravings will go away just from the fiber. So that is that. Another good source of fiber is flaxseed. You can make flaxseed roti out of it. Then tubers and roots, as I said, you replace your rice or your rotis with just tubers. So you can take yam and cut it into slices and fry them. I'm sure all Indians know, but you just fry them in olive oil and then top it off with some spice blend of your choice, and it is delicious. So you eat that along with your protein, which can be beans, or you can make a salsa with beans, a salad with beans. You can make a soup with beans. I also make bean burgers. So if you follow my channel Sonal's Food on YouTube, you will see a lot of these recipes. If you go for vegetarian, non-vegetarian recipes are very easy to find. You can find it all over the world, and they are on my channel too. But I would want you to go and check out the breads and some of the vegetarian recipes and ideas there. So that is tubers. The other thing I would like you guys to do is add psyllium husk to your meals every day. So either you put it in your meals or you can have it with water. Buy the unsweetened variety, and you can, just before you sleep, add. You want to start off with 1 teaspoon and then come to 3 teaspoons, which is about a tablespoon every day. And this is a natural fiber to take, safe to take every day, and it will make your gut happy, your gut buddies happy. There's another fiber called inulin fiber, which is a prebiotic fiber, which also is excellent because it feeds your gut bacteria. This is something you will be able to buy online. There are 2 brands. There is one mixture of prebiotic fiber, and then there's inulin fiber. They are excellent. That's another thing you should add to feed your gut. And a lot of times what happens when you're fasting, or if you're craving something, if you have the fiber, these two, you can even mix them up, and if you have that, it fills you up. So that's another way of like continuing your non-eating period. But these are 2 fibers. If you add, it is going to just help your digestion, and digestion is everything, like I said. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, great. So I think, we are like 11 minutes over, and I have 3 great recipes for you. So for those of you who love eating rotis, these are 3 rotis. These are Indian style rotis, and they are vegetarian, because that becomes a challenge. If you're watching any of these foreign channels, they add eggs to this. I try to keep at least my breads, flat breads, egg free. If you talk about sliced bread and other things, I have not been successfully able to make them without eggs. So for those of you who are vegetarians, that's going to be a tough part. But let's look at this recipe. I made this recipe especially for this course. So what I did was, if you make a millet flour flatbread, roti or bhakri, whatever you call it, there is a certain amount of carbs in it. And according to my calculation, fairly around 30 grams of carbs in each roti, because what we forget to understand is when you're making rice, the quantity of rice that you've taken, you have added at least twice as much water, and you're free to add, as I said, 6 times as much water as you want. But when you're making these rotis, each cup of flour will take only 1 cup of water. So you can imagine the proportion of carbs that you're eating. So you have a feeling that you're eating something equal to maybe rice, but you land up eating a lot more carbs. So whenever you're eating all of these things, you want to, in the beginning, do these basic calculations. Once you get the hang of it, once you understand what your body is able to handle, then you don't have to calculate every day. But at least in the beginning, you want to do that. Now, in my case, if I eat a bhakri or a roti from jowar or bajra, my sugar spikes. So I don't eat any of these, but I had to figure out a way to make it for you guys who probably are borderline diabetics or who are not diabetics, who just want to get healthier. You want to cut down on the carbs in your food so that you have a flatter belly. And so for those of you who, somebody had asked me for belly fat, and cutting down on carbs is the best thing or the best way to cut down on belly fat. So let me talk about how you can cut down on the millet flour carbs. What I've done is I've taken 75 grams, which is half a cup of jowar flour, and to that I added for 25 grams of coconut flour, which was fairly 1/4 cup. Okay, now coconut flour plumps up after you put water. So it almost is half and half if you see later on in proportion. To that, I have added 1.5 tablespoon of psyllium husk. Psyllium husk is in Indian language called isabgol. So as I said, you have to buy the sugar-free and non-sweetened one. So you add these three things, add a pinch of salt, mix it well, and then you add hot water to it. I've written down all the proportions, and that is there in the PowerPoint that I have shared with you. So please download the PowerPoint. It's very important because I've not just used it as a guidance for myself, but it has all of the information that you might need to just remember what I have spoken about. And also it has 3 recipes, which is the good thing. So you need this dough. It is going to almost be like a chapati dough, because I want to make it clear here. Psyllium husk is very sticky. So it almost behaves like gluten. And gluten is something that is the sticky part in wheat flour, if you notice, which a lot of people are sensitive to nowadays. So if you take out gluten from any of the recipes, you can add psyllium husk and it gives it that slight stickiness. So if you ask me, can I just not use psyllium husk? I would say not in this recipe, because we also added coconut flour, which will actually completely break down this roti when you're making it. So adding the psyllium husk is important. It's dirt cheap, easily available, especially in India and even abroad. So that is something you need to buy. And once you make this mixture with hot water, the psyllium husk plumps up and it makes a dough. And you can even roll these rotis. So when you're making millet flour rotis, the traditional way is to actually pat them on top and then you kind of make it. But a lot of modern women don't know how to make it, and sometimes even the maids don't know how to make it. So when you make it in this way, in my recipe, you can even roll it out. Just take some dry flour, and on top of that put your ball and roll it out and cook it just like any other bhakri. The wonderful thing about it is, I forgot to mention, is that it cuts down on the carbs by half. So in my calculation, if a regular bhakri is 30 grams, trust me, it is 30 grams of carbs. If you remember, 4 grams is 1 teaspoon. So imagine when you're eating one bhakri, how many carbs you're eating. So although it is a great healthy substitute because it's got minerals and all of those wonderful things, but it's a lot of carbs. So I would suggest that anybody who wants to still continue eating flour, you should make it this way. And I want to show you guys what coconut flour looks like. So I have, tell me if you can see it. One of you, if you can just message saying that you can see it, that would help. Hello? Yeah. Okay, great. So this is, the kind of quality you want to buy, which is very, very fine. So I'm just going to use my hand and show you. This is not desiccated coconut. It is something that comes after removing the coconut milk. It is completely dehydrated and then ground down into this powdery thing. Only if you use this consistency or this kind of fine powder can you make those rotis. So this is a fairly expensive ingredient if you compare it to something as unhealthy and basic and like wheat flour. Yeah, then this is going to be expensive because it is full of goodness. So anything that is full of goodness, you have to pay a price for that. That is that. Let me show you the psyllium husk or the isabgol. A lot of you might have seen it, especially our grandparents used to have it. So this is thick. You can even grind it and use it, but I use it just as it is and it works equally well. You don't need to grind it. You want to make sure you have a good brand of it, because there is one brand that I bought, organic. I forgot the name of it. It's an organic thing and it doesn't plump up. So it has the fiber, it doesn't plump up, so that will not work in the recipes. I use this basic brand called Jodhana, and or something. I don't. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to share the links to all of these ingredients. Because with psyllium husk, what happens is sometimes after cooking it turns purple, and people ask me why is it purple. It is safe to eat, but it's just a very colorful roti, and not everybody wants to eat purple colored foods because it resembles poison or whatever. But it is not poisonous. But that's a question that I get often, and that's why I know that certain brands I stick to, because only, these are not regular foods and regular recipes, so they don't just work if you buy anything that you find in the market, come home and try it out. No, you want to kind of stick to certain proportions and do this. But it's a very easy recipe, and I'm sure you like it. It tastes pretty good. Add a pinch of salt, and everything will taste good. Also, after your roti is ready, put some ghee and it will taste even better. You can also add some spices to make it like a thepla. I've also kept two rotis ready, which I'm going to show you, but I want to quickly cover the other two recipes that I was talking about. So you can also make my coconut flour roti, which is very popular on my keto channel. It comes out beautifully, and I have shared a link with you guys. So it's right next to the roti. So it's on the page where the roti recipe is. You will see there is a video. Click on it. I am sure it will play. If it doesn't, I will share the links for that too. I'll share it on our WhatsApp group or email you guys from time to time. So whatever is required, I'm going to email you guys. So now the coconut flour roti is very similar. It just has a different proportion. It's made from coconut flour and psyllium husk. I also add a little bit of butter or oil. In this case, you can put olive oil, salt, and hot water. Similarly, the only thing is this roti needs to be rolled on between two parchment papers or two silicone mats. Silicone mats are something that is excellent. You will see in my recipe video. I'm using them. And if you're going to be eating these recipes regularly, because this roti is one carb, one net carb, I mean, it can't get better than that. So whatever else you're eating, you can use your carbs in that, because the roti is carb free almost. So watch the recipe, make it, try it out, buy these ingredients, and it will come out perfectly, because you will see that there's a lot of comments under the video where people have tried it and they've loved it. You have to adjust your expectations to a certain extent. It is not going to taste like a wheat flour roti. Nothing will, because even a rice flour roti doesn't taste like a wheat flour roti. So there's no reason for this to taste like that. It's just going to be this wonderful replacement, or wonderful healthy replacement, which will help you eat some of your favorite foods without missing the roti. Otherwise, you're left with just vegetables and beans and a salad every day. In this way, you can make your Indian foods the Indian way and still kind of eat in that combination with a little bit of achar, a little bit of yogurt if you like that, and still kind of lose weight and get healthy. The third roti is again one of the best, because it's made with flaxseed flour, which is full of fiber. It also has omega-3s. And it's a very simple recipe. You take boiling water, add flaxseed flour to it. And you want to always grind your flaxseed flour when you're using it, because it gets rancid really quickly. The oils in flaxseed will get rancid. And once any oil gets rancid, it is horrible for your health. It is extremely damaging. So you don't want to do that. And if you buy flaxseed flour ready-made, then you want to store it in the refrigerator and you want to use it within a couple of months. So it's better to just buy flaxseed, and I use a coffee grinder to grind it into a powder. Use boiling water. You can add a little bit of fat to it, any oil, and salt. Roll this. This has to also be rolled between two parchment papers or silicone mats. If you're going to do this often, please buy silicone mats, and you're going to love it. Let me show you. I also wanted to show you guys almond flour, just in case anybody is curious, because rotis can be made out of almond flour. I don't really advise that, because it's very expensive, and I just feel like, why not eat almonds soaked and in kind of dessert kind of recipes, of course sugar free, but it sort of feels like the roti itself becomes extremely heavy. and it's delicious though. So if you're eating it as a snack, if you're making a matri kind of thing or a snack with this, then almond flour really works well. I have a couple of recipes of matri on my channel, which is keto. So you can use almond flour for that, but you don't want to use it in a everyday roti thing. So I forgot to show you guys how thin that needs to be. So this also has to be very powdery, and I buy the blanched one. So the cover is removed. If you have the cover on, it doesn't give you the texture that you're looking for. So I prefer that. If you also, the cover of the almond is something that is indigestible, and it is full of lectins, the chemical that I spoke about, which is not easy to digest and absorb. So you want to always soak the almonds and peel them and use. And that is exactly what Indians used to do in their culture. We used to always have our mothers soak it for us and give it to us after peeling, so that we become smart and our memory becomes sharper and all of that. So I am done with this class. And last but not the least, I want to show you the rotis that I have kept ready for you guys. So this is the coconut flour roti. And look at how flexible it is. So you can even fill it up with anything of your choice and make a burrito. If you make a larger roti, you want to make it a little thicker so that it'll hold well. But if you make a larger roti, then you can make a burrito. You can even fry it a little bit to make it harder or crisper, and that can be eaten as chips. This is a flaxseed roti. Again, if you see, I have a lovely thepla recipe with flaxseed. And as you know, flaxseed is so healthy, and this is such a great way of eating it. You can make theplas out of it. And if you put spices in it and you make theplas, what happens is that you don't get the smell of the flaxseed, which is not as pleasant as it should have been. So these are the two rotis. And yesterday, while I was trying the recipe out for you guys, I made the millet flour one that turned out really good. My husband was also like, this is almost like the normal one, but always remember the word almost. So if you keep your expectations under a check, you're going to love everything. Just know that you're doing this for your health, and so that you can live very, very long to run around with your grandchildren and great grandchildren. So that should be the main focus. And I hope it was a good class. So brand of psyllium husk, I will share it with you. I'll share the links with you. The brand is Jodhana, I think, but I'm going to share Amazon links on our WhatsApp group. And I think a couple of people are not on WhatsApp, so I'll just email them and or you can buy whatever brand you like, but just make sure you don't buy the sweetened or sugar one. Sometimes they'll say sugar free, but they've put some kind of a sweetener, which is not good for you, and it cannot be used in roti recipes. Any other questions? Anybody wants to unmute themselves and say hi? I'm feeling lonely, so if one of you just says hi, that will be great. So I'm assuming there are no questions, no doubts. Okay, brand of coconut flour. Now, coconut flour and almond flour turns out to be expensive from time to time. So I keep trying different brands that turn out to be, which are cheap on Amazon, cheaper. Nothing is cheap. And I am mostly disappointed. Like 80% of times I get disappointed. So I go with a safe brand that I've used always, which is Urban Platter. So Urban Platter is not good for everything, but it's good for the coconut flour. So all right, no problem, JC. So yeah, that is the coconut flour brand. Please share the links. Yes, I will. Do you guys think you will make one of these rotis? You can share the recipes with your mom, wife, maid, husband, whoever makes rotis at home, and let me know how it turned out once you try it out. I would like to know in the next class how you liked it. Okay, great. Rashmi says she's going to make it tomorrow. I am so glad. And, if possible, I want you guys to also measure your sugars. So if you have a fair idea of where it is normally when you eat regular rotis or rice, and then you eat it with this, and then let me know. I forgot to say that I would like most people to keep their carb intake per day under 100 grams. So when I say most, it is like everybody who is healthy and great and everything. And then from there, if you have some metabolic disease, or your doctor said you are borderline, then you want to go to like 70. If you are a diabetic, then you want to go to like 60. I mean, you basically want to make sure that you're not taking too many medicines, and you're able to manage your sugars just with mild exercise and diet. So then you keep going down from there. I am eating 70 and I take medicines. But that's just where and how I can manage it while keeping my sanity and not obsessing over what I'm eating at every moment. So that this is a point where I've reached. Also, I do sort of intermittent fasting, which we will talk about soon. That's another way of reversing your metabolic disease. Any other questions, or can we just say bye for tonight? Okay, then bye everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thanks.